if you don't feel weird, you should be worried. And the last thing I want to say is, because people only really find out that they are dependent on something when it stops providing from them, and at that point it's often too late to survive without it. Hello, good evening. As promised, here we are again on Outside the Box. I'm Jason Liosatos. My guest this evening is David DuByne. You can find David on ADAPT 2030 on YouTube, oilseedcrops.org. David is the culmination of a great, we've had a week with Professor Tim Ball, who is talking about climate change, or the lack of climate change. To David, I'm delighted with David's work. I've been watching David's work for a while. Amazing guest. David, listen, thanks for joining me tonight. Really appreciate you coming.
Let me see. The electromagnetic changes is kind of what's intuitively signaling people that there's bigger changes. Because you have to think about it. Your body is an electromagnetic conduit. You're an electrical receiver. And our sun is changing its electrical frequency. And, you know, the sun being the largest thing in our solar system. And you also have to wonder, you know, thinking about our sun and the planets in the solar system as an encapsulated, you know, organism cruising through the galaxy here. What about the other stars that are also having frequency changes? And what about going back and then tracing that and that and that back? As we go through these cycles, the humans are going to respond because our Earth's responding. It's stepping down in its charge. That's why we're seeing massive electrical storms. You know, there's a lot of things that are just disrupting at the moment. Electrical grids. You're always reading about some sort of internet downage somewhere. The northern lights that are creeping really far south. Where they see Denmark that had northern lights just last week. That's really far south. So the electromagnetic frequency changes in the magnetosphere on our planet, you know, just intuitively we are waking up as a species, you know, as we should. You know, animals sense it first, and if you have been noticing, which I have, I was here growing this year, and the squirrels and the crows are voracious. I cannot describe to you how they're eating everything and preparing everything in sight. Now and I'm in a warmer climate, you know, down toward Florida, and you know, I don't know what's going on with the animal life here, but everywhere you look across the planet, everybody's talking about the strange migration patterns. That's the magnetic pole shifting, where, you know, animals that are actually navigating off the magnetic field are getting in distress. Things are migrating to the wrong place. The migrations are in the wrong time of the year. Things that are getting ready for winter are like on steroids and overdrive. That just are, you know, bobcats coming into people's front yards looking for food to grab animals to get ready for the winter. That's not normal. You know, that's way not normal. Something in nature is signaling those animals to get ready far above the actual normal that they would. You know, nature's signaling to them, hey, you got to get double ready this year because winter's going to be incredibly long, incredibly cold, so you're going to have to get twice the amount of food. And I think the animals are really picking up on this, and insects, birds, they're picking up on it. So we would too. We're intuitive beings, and all these changes electromagnetically are having that, what you're talking about, that cause and effect on people's emotions, their brainwave patterns, the way they're processing information. There's a lot of changes in there. But, you know, it's not about fear and doom and gloom. It's about understanding the pattern, finding the opportunity, because if you can offer people value during this time, because there are going to be a lot of people in distress. They're not going to know what to do. They haven't prepared. They're going to need solutions. Great. If you already know what those needs will be, through past history, you can kind of learn a few, and you can understand a few. And people are going to need more food. They're going to need different shelter. Might have to increase the R values of homes, indoor vertical agriculture, building out a lot of things. Going to need different types of medicine. Supply chain disruptions means something's going to go more regional or local. I mean, there's a lot of things you already foresee that are going to happen. And if you have a chance to jump on those before they happen and be able to offer that value as we move through these changes, that's where the greatest opportunity is. Learn from the past to be able to you know, see the future. It shouldn't be scary. It should be enlightening, because we're shaking off this old system and we're going to move into something entirely new. And, you know, Eckhart Tolle is one of my favorites. I really like his, you know, he's so deep. I need to read the same page like 3 times, you know, before I can move on to the next page. That's not a book you can just flip through and read. And it's like, wow, that was so deep. I need to read that again. Yeah. You know, but talking about living in the moment. So every moment you've ever experienced being alive is a moment that you've learned. So being trapped in these old learning, they don't call it education and programming on TV for nothing. There's an agenda there to get you to think a certain way, behave a certain way. Now, you've been programmed in the moment of now, so you can unlearn that and reprogram in the now as well moving forward, because every moment you've ever experienced has been the now. So why would it be any different of learning something new and just letting the old, just snip it like a pair of scissors, clip, and just let the old thing go, because it's right now and you can relearn. It's a new second right now. You can start again because it's now again. See, it just happened again, and wow, it's now again. Now you can relearn because everything's fresh and new. Oh, it's now again. You know, and it's all fresh and new as we move forward. So if you can start to think in that way, of everything can be new with fresh starts, offering value and finding the opportunities, seeing how the economy is going to shift, how people are going to behave, where they will migrate to, where the countries that will be the safest, what kind of food crops are going to need to move to different habitation zones. The blueprint's right in front of you. I mean, there should be no fear whatsoever. You should be gobbling all this up, going, wow, look at this opportunity. Wow, I could do this. Look at this business I could do. Look at these people I can help here. Wow, 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 wow. Instead of going, oh, no, the world's going to change. Well, you know, we need this change. It's called evolution of the mind, the body, the spirit. We need it. Galactic cosmic rays, bring them on. We need more. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
I think it's great, David. And in a sense, it is that thing, that opportunity, because sometimes only once things are taken away we wake up. So it's forcing people to awaken, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The worse things get, the better people get quite often, and the more creative we get. So yeah, it's forcing people to wake up. So, and just to cover myself with Eckhart Tolle, I used to eat, sleep, drink Eckhart Tolle for years and years, 27 years ago. Or whenever he started out, and I love Eckhart Tolle. I want to say, Eckhart, if you ever see this, I love you, man. You're amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I learned so much.
So much with me. Wow. my thing with Eckhart and Deepak Chopra did a video for us. He's helped us in the conferences. So I want to say a shout out to them, but I want to say this as well, which is where I think people like yourself come in now, David, and people like myself. I think what we're doing now is we're helping people to also understand how to find peace within themselves. And my shows start next week about that. I'm going to have different guests on and speak myself. But I think the importance is, and why I've often said something about Eckhart Tolle and saying, look, he's brilliant at helping people be with balance, come back into the now, refocus and reestablish, reconnect from their dislocation, relocate, remember from their dismembering. But what bothers me with it is that they put people back into the world and they don't talk about the system and explain the system like you do, which is dislocating them in the first place, right? So it's great to refocus and rebalance, but I think we're in a new thing now where we've got to, because a lot of the people that I hear, not you, but a lot of the people who talk about the dark side, about how bad it is and the corruption and the thing, don't talk about finding peace within. A lot of the people who talk about finding peace within don't talk about the darkness of the world and how it's so corrupt and manipulating people purposely, you know. So I think there's a confluence now of we have to have the courage to see the darkness and know what's creating the symptoms within us of dislocation, and also then work on the dislocation within ourselves. So be like spiritual warriors, really more like, do you know what I mean, David?
I do, and I don't want to get too deep off here, but it seems like the planet's been hijacked for an agenda, and I mean the entire planet, because when you look at the higher echelons of power, it seems to be individuals behind the scenes that aren't well known. Like everybody knows George Soros. Okay, he's a front guy. But who's back behind him pushing the strings, telling him what to tell everybody, telling him how to organize the disorganization of society through their NGO network? I mean, beyond that, there's definitely an agenda to control the human civilization in a certain way, to make it think a certain thing, feel a certain way. And again, it's all about energetic vibration and frequency. And, you know, where does it go? I mean, the entire planet's thinking a certain thing and vibrating at a certain level. So imagine, you know, and it comes back into Eckhart Tolle's. I mean, if you can bend reality with thought, and there's another thing I want to get into, it might be a little too woo-woo, but if 8 billion people started thinking a different way at the exact same time, I really firmly believe that what you see around you dimensionally or vibrationally would shift into a different pattern. I think we have the opportunity to reset the pattern structure vibrationally on our planet with the human mind and the resonant frequency that comes out of us, because each of us is a creative being. I mean, every single tradition across the planet, I don't care if you're 5,000, 8,000 years ago, all the way up until now of modern, you know, religions, they all talk about how the mind can be used to conquer and do absurd amounts of things that are considered miracles. Like if we can use our mind to manifest this and get 8 billion people thinking positive thoughts versus negative. You know, because think about the Grand Solar Minimum. A lot of negativity is coming out about it. I'm trying to add the positive bit in there, that there is a lot of opportunity here. But if everybody's focusing on the negative, are they going to manifest that? Versus where I'm at, hey, look at the opportunities, look at the opportunities. Cycles are repeating, look at the opportunities. You know, could we manifest that? If there's enough people thinking in a certain direction, what can we truly make it be by our thoughts and our actions compared to what we're being fed? And there's a huge difference in that. And that maybe that's a little woo-woo out there. I don't know, I'll leave it there.
No, man, let's go a bit woo-woo if you want, David. I don't mind. Obviously, I want to come to the thing, and I want you to explain the cycles to people, but I know we're leading up to that. But this is very important because we're talking about not only... well, I've said in my writing that we've been... When I would say we're possessed, you know, when someone says you're possessed by an evil spirit, I believe we're possessed, and this is positive, not negative. You've got to know the prison, like Gurdjieff said, before you can escape it. So I believe we're possessed spiritually. I believe we're possessed psychically and physically by the whoever one you want to call them that currently thinks it's in control of this world, because physically we're being affected so much by the stress and fear and worry and anxiety of having to pay bills, like a sword of Damocles holding over our heads. You know, psychically we're possessed by that evil sort of cabal, and it's you know, it's a shocking realization, but it is a good thing to go into. I mean, on my show, I had a lady called Lynn McTaggart. She wrote The Power of Eight. And they're talking that we've got to come to this now, I believe, as humanity. We can't just talk about the physical. And we don't have to go too interdimensionally or out of this realm to even talk about it. I mean, she's doing experiments with people, and so is Greg Braden and people, who they're actually focusing their attention on somebody and they're getting better. I mean, I did it with a lump on my finger. They said I had to have an operation. It was a big gristly lump, David, and I put my mind to that, and I looked at it every day for months, saying it's going, it's going, it's gone, it's gone, and it went. So when someone says to me, "Oh, you can't affect matter via consciousness," I had a conversation with Bruce Lipton on my show about it. He's a lovely man. And I said, well, what happens when you have a wee or a poo then? You know, you can affect molecules via consciousness. Of course, then you can take a step further. You can affect things in the future, in the past, and in the present. And it's a timeline. You can change things in the past, present, and future as well. And I know we're not going to go into all that here, but it is. I'm glad you brought the subject up, David, because it's very, very important and very serious and very worrying. The people have forgotten their power, and I say we're like magicians with amnesia. You know. Someone was talking about Jesus the other day and saying, well, if he was here, then he'd be saying, well, you can do what I can do and more. Stop worshipping me, take the crosses off you, and stop hiding behind me, and get on with it. And I think it was you, David, wasn't it? You were talking about that, weren't you?
One of my guests was, yeah.
Ah, right, yeah. And I think that's what they'd say now, is that the great saints who are here, or the great sages, or the great shamans. I've done some shamanic training. I was so fascinated by it because I was helped by a number of shamanic sort of people who showed me some tremendous things. There was one gentleman called Charles Muses who took a, it's important to say this, who took a, she was what they call them, anthropologist who didn't believe in anything other than the mind and facts and physical stuff. He took her to see a shaman in Siberia, and the shaman said, would you like a demonstration? He looked down, he moved his arms, and her head started going like this, and just before she collapsed, he went like that, and she straightened up, and it changed her forever, because she realized that there is a force that can be used for good or bad. Now, back to what you said, David, absolutely with you. Imagine if 8 billion or 7 billion souls put their mind to something and said, well, actually, we must focus on this and change it. I had this conversation with Sasha, Sasha Stone, who I think you had a chat with recently, and Simon Parks. And I actually went a step further and said, if we get to the point where things are going to collapse and completely, we need to save this society and planet, then we may have to use that as a directional, I don't like to use weapon, but tool to shift everything. And by God, I know we could, because I've been healed by people who can do that, and I've been really hurt and attacked by people who can do that through the ether as well. We, you know, in one sense, thank God we haven't got that power in our current. It's one of the caveats I give when I do talks about it. I say, in one sense, we need it back as quick as we possibly can, and in another sense, in our current psychological imbalanced position, most people are not irresponsible enough to have that power back, because there'd be piles of Ferraris and naked women everywhere. Do you know what I mean, David?
That would be dangerous. You know, even myself, I mean, sometime if you get angry or lash out, it would take that one time of you using that power, and wow, you would mentally be scarred for the rest, you know, yourself. Like, imagine if you had some of those powers that you see in the movies. What's that? I forget, the one with all the wizards and all the things, but they have the power to...
Is it?
Yeah, well, stuff along that line, yeah, and the witches and warlocks and things. They had that power to let you can see the energy coming out of their fingertips with the higher-end wizards there. You know, but some of these higher echelons of power, too, they're really into the dark energies. You know, in the United States during the election, we saw about all this, you know, spirit cooking and witchcraft in the higher echelons of the power in the United States on the Hillary Clinton side, and that whole contingent that they were hanging with there out of New York City that were all into the witchcraft and the you know, dark side, devil worshiping and Satan. That was crazy. Came full out and nobody blinked an eye. We're like, oh, okay, whatever. When's the next TV program on? So yeah, let me go. Michael Lazaro was my guest. Michael Lazaro, he runs a YouTube channel called Evolutionary Energy Arts, and his YouTube channel's been really throttled back based on the information he's putting out. He kind of couples in a mix of the Grand Solar Minimum, the weather changes, and the same things we're talking about with the spirituality and the changes, manifesting destiny through your thoughts and actions. Like, he puts that all together. He studied in depth in Nag Hammadi scrolls, so that was kind of his scholarly studies, was this. And again, you know, it's all about split the piece of wood and I am there, lift a stone, I am there, take your own action, I am there. You know, it's like becoming your own conduit for these energies. And he's deep in and really studied into the Kabbalah and further back into these kind of, you know, knowledge bases. So you might want to look him up, Michael Lazaro, Evolutionary Energy Arts. So with all that said, I mean, everybody understands there's light and dark on this side. So my volition is they're trying to run us into the ground without warning anybody about these changes in the Grand Solar Minimum to get a certain outcome of energy that they're looking for out of the human species, or I could say the human battery. Now, again, all you have to do is take a glimpse back in history to see how this society has been directed in one way or another. And when the Vatican comes out and says, yeah, you know, it's a sin to litter, and global warming's real, and we have to put in like church taxes to fight global warming. But then just a couple hundred years ago, you look at the damage that the church did across the planet, how many societies and genocides. Seriously, and I'm not making any joke. If you take Stalin, Lenin, and Hitler and combine it together, that's only a fraction of what the Catholic Church had murdered through the centuries. And, you know, you start to look at what is this power-based structure that keeps trying to funnel us back into this system of control with the money and the power. And now you have, before the climate change debate was the, you know, the United Nations coming in and saying you have to change this, that, or the other. But now the Vatican's back in on it. What's going on with this rallying the troops and trying to circle the wagons again? So it keeps stepping up in echelons of power here. Like everybody thought in the beginning, the UN was the highest body of level. Now they've brought in the spiritual level. The church needs to hop in and have its own say that we need global carbon taxes. What just happened? What's going on here? Really, you take a wider look at everything. There's so much going on than just, you know, crop losses here and, you know, starvation coming over there. There's something way larger, especially with the culmination of these cycles that all ancient traditions talked about, you know, the economic and all that stuff I talked about in the beginning. We are at probably 8 or 9 cycles culminating right now. So somebody's taking advantage of this natural cycle to run something that they're trying to implement. So they're riding on top of a natural cycle to get a higher amount of outcome. That's kind of the way I was talking about. Deborah Tavares, you know, we were talking about using the ionization of the atmosphere for different types of frequency ranges. They're using the more ionized atmosphere with the higher differential charge between our decreasing sun and the decreasing earth, that sky line, if you will, all the way up to the ionosphere. It's getting more highly charged. So militaries across the planet are getting more bang for their buck on these energy, frequency control, you know, communication devices and whatever else they're doing with it. They're getting more bang for their buck. They're riding on top of a natural cycle. So with that being said, and you understand in the physical, like right now, you get a higher charge, you can bounce the signal further. They're just riding on top of it, creating a better outcome. But what is it with all the culminating cycles and now the church getting involved? What is really going on? And that's kind of, you know, can wrap in the biggest of the big tapestries now, if you want to think about it that way, just more than the weather changes in the economy.
I was just glancing down at some of my scribbles here, you know, and I said, you know, knowing it frees us, you know, and there's a lot of people feeling like they're going crazy now, and there's something taking place on this planet. There's no doubt about it, because I speak to people here every day and I can see it. When people open up, they feel like they're going crazy, and I think that's actually part of the sort of, I don't like the word awakening, but I think that's part of the lifting of that veil and the lifting of that amnesia, if you like, and that chloroform, which has to lift now. And I feel we won't go too into it, I know, maybe another time, but and you know, there's something taking place and something is influencing us. I know. But I was saying, you know, often because people resist the truth, don't they? No, I said, you're knowing the truth, even though it may be a shock, makes us realize why we felt so uncomfortable and desperate. I know that I said that earlier, but it's positive, not negative, because that realization opens the gates to our freedom. And I also wanted to say, if you feel in harmony with this system and debt, you should be worried. You know, you shouldn't feel in harmony with it. You should feel weird, you know. I had a Buddhist monk come in here the other day and he said, if you felt normal, you want to worry about yourself. If you don't feel weird, you should be worried. And the last thing I want to say is, because people only really find out that they are dependent on something when it stops providing from them, and at that point it's often too late to survive without it. So that's why I'm delighted for people as brave as you, David, to be coming forward now and saying, look, this is going to take place. I can tell you, because it's every 400 years or whatever it is. You can talk a bit about the cycles if you like. It's been shown that it's happened before. We're looking like it's going to happen again. Are you going to wait till it falls on your head, or are you going to do something now? So I'm delighted that it's sort of forcing us out of our conditioning and out of our somnambulance, if you like, that sleepwalking, just carrying on like that, you know. And I also, we were talking in this very studio earlier with somebody, and I was saying, we were talking about, with the therapist, she was saying that we've both said that people have got a tremendous capacity to endure suffering and pain, which is brilliant. It's put in us for a reason, so we can climb mountains, get food, you know, endure good things, you know, things that are going to help us. But we got a tremendous capacity for suffering. And I think it was Eckhart Tolle actually that said he's found such peace, you could tie him to a speaker in a nightclub, but if he could leave, he would. You know, that put it very well. But the thing is, we are just going along with it. We sit in offices all day, bored to death until we die. You know, we carry on doing the same thing. We're being whacked with a stick every day. But it's easier to do that, like an elephant in a circus. It keeps tugging to try and get away, and eventually it just performs its little tricks and plays its life out there. But it's coming to a point now, which what I can see with people like yourself, Piers Corbyn, and all these people talking, that actually we're going to have to change and adapt 2030 on YouTube, your channel, or we're not going to make it and survive, and it's going to be really painful for us. So I love that exciting thing coming now. Listen, if you don't learn how to grow a bit of food and come together as a group, but we're so psychologically imbalanced and screwed up. I mean, there's been groups started here many times, and I see them all fall apart and bickering and all this kind of thing. But you know, it's so stupid just to wait for something to happen, particularly in the spiritual circles who say, oh well, you know, just let things carry on, what you resist persists and all this. But if there's an army of someone coming over that hill and or there's going to be a famine, then you better adapt, you know. Don't wait too long. So I'm loving your work. I've been looking at about the machines you can buy to help grow stuff. We've grown stuff. I used to have allotments. We've grown sprouts and stuff. And I've stocked up on food probably 5 times over the years, and then eaten it all when nothing happens, David, you know. You know? Well,
at least you have that skill of rotation, right? Like you need it, you know, when you buy something, as you rotate it through, and you're still, because even if you buy it now, just forget everything else we talked about today. The food price is going to rise. So whatever you buy today, it's going to be half price of what it will be in 6 months from now, and it'll be 4 times cheaper today than it will be in a whole year and a half from now. And things like rice and canned goods, they'll stay good for years and years and years. So think about it as buying something at 75% discount today. I mean, would you do that? I mean, imagine if you went into a store and it was 75% off. You would have a totally different thought of should you buy it or not buy it. When you look at food, though, thinking about in a year and a half or the harvest season of 2021, right now it's going to be 75% off. So, you know, look at it this way. Whatever you're buying for food now is going to be cheaper than in the future. So if you're really thinking about money and cost savings and how to save money, getting something now would behoove you. And I really say that. You know, I've been at this for 5 years. in the beginning, I was out in the wilderness by my own. There were a couple, 2, 3 people. I had John Casey, and I would be talking, and the band at Suspicious Observers were doing their thing, and there was just a handful of people talking about it, and peers, and a few other astrophysicists were giving us some warning about 5 years ago. But now there's really a very huge crew going, well, there's way things going wrong here, and we can prove it through cycles and peer-reviewed research on how these cycles repeat, and they can find it in the geologic record, they find it tree rings, all these proxies with beryllium-10 or ice cores, or just with ocean drilling sediments on how when the ice rafts come off, it's bigger stones, there's like more ice debris coming versus smaller stones where it's more inland, kind of smaller break-offs. So, I mean, there's so much data out there that is cyclical, and if you really look back in time, not 100 years, 200 years, 400 years, you need to go take a look at some of these climate cycle charts on the 6,000, 12,000 year periodicity, and take a look at how they just lump up. They just stack, 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 and they come out every 2,000 years, every 3,000 years. And you start, take a look at some of these longer cycles that can be proven. One of my favorites is stalactites. They grow off caves when there's more water at the ceiling of the caves. And when you cut them open, they're really cool inside. They look like a tree ring, but in a different fashion. They're made out of stone because they calcify as the water seeps through. And some of these will actually grow and touch the bottom of the floor, and those are the ones you really want. They're almost like a full-fledged tree inside there. And you can go back 50, 60,000 years on some of these stalactites that are up there. And it's all about the rainfall. It either shifts or it doesn't. And they find the intertropical convergence zone shifts, and this is what causes the rainfall depletion or increases. And we're starting to see that now. I mean, every time you turn on the news, it's a 500-year flood, it's a 1,000-year flood, the record snowfalls. It's not because the oceans are heating, it's because our cloud bands and the jet streams are shifting. It's a huge difference. But again, if you knew these changes were coming, you would already need an explanation as to what is happening when people start asking the questions. So think about how long ago they started to build in global warming into our consciousness. What's it been, 35, 40 years? Knowing that these changes would occur. Because if you follow the cycles out and you knew on a 2,000-year cycle that in the next 20 or 30 years the cycle would repeat, and all these people are going to be asking questions, well, if you can control the media, as a lot of multinationals and governments do, they control the media. It's so apparent in the United States. So would it be no different to put out global warming information for 30 years to get people ready so when it does happen, these shifts, these changes that are so apparent in everybody's backyard, there's already a ready-made excuse for it. You don't even need to question it. All you have to do is believe in the global warming religion and you're all good. And I might add one more thing here, caveat to it. We're told this is a runaway extinction level event, it's a society-ending thing, the planet's going to end, we're all going to end. Yet here in the United States, the auto manufacturers are going away from small cars because everybody wants to drive SUVs and pickup trucks. So a lot of the lines in Ford, GM, and these different kind of large car companies in the United States, they're cutting the smaller car models. And my dad and myself were sitting down, we were waiting for somebody, and we were faced toward it's not a highway, but it's a road, and we were counting the number of SUVs versus the amount of small cars. And it was like SUV, 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 pickup truck, SUV, SUV, pickup truck, van, pickup truck, SUV, SUV. Oh, there's a Honda. And then SUV, 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 pickup truck, SUV, SUV. Oh, there's a small car from 10 years ago. And it was like this. And with this whole, it's a runaway, it's an extinction level, and they're only manufacturing big cars. This makes no sense. Like, we should stop all global traffic of all things. No more shipping on the ships across the ocean, bringing bits of junk from across the planet. Don't need it. Stop all global shipping. If it's such a runaway extinction level event, no more air flights. All private air travel stops. Commercial can still go, but if it's that dire of an event, an individual flying on a private plane, that's the first thing that needs to stop globally. No more private flights at all. 0% chance. All of them are grounded. Nobody's talking like this, though. Everything continues as usual. Banks are still loaning for financing for beachfront builds on a 30-year loan. So what you're being told out in front truly is the complete opposite of what's happening behind the scenes. So the real people with money know it's not an extinction level event, it's a cycle, and they're riding on top of it to try to get the most bang for the buck, to put you back in the box because you're getting out of the box.
And I love the thing about when you're saying about changing and adapting. I wrote you on my book, the situation of rule by gangs of the most deceptively unscrupulous people in a country will continue unchallenged until human society is
challenged.
Yeah, until it's bloody challenged, and until human society is enabled to function benignly and independently of destructive leaders. We call, this is the bit I liked about, someone said this to me once, we call this enabling point the inception of manual override.